A lot of nail biters yesterday, but only one big upset. Let's see how the top 25 looks going into week 10 for college football. We'll look at that 25 through 12, and we'll start at the 25th position. I'm actually going to leave UNLV at 25. They had a tough loss to Boise. Boise actually had to score right at the end to win that game, 29 to 24. But due to how close UNLV scored them in some other games, I'm actually going to leave them in my top 25 at number 25. Moving into the top 25 will be the team in the Sun Belt that has the best record, and that would be the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana. They're going to be at number 24. They actually don't play James Madison, which might be the best team there. There are some other ones. We'll have to play that out to see, but I'm going to move Louisiana into my top 25. At 23, we have Dion in Colorado. They defeated Cincinnati 34-24. The only problem Colorado has now is they have two losses. They already lost to Kansas State, so they could have a rematch against them, or they'll need for Iowa State and BYU to lose two games, and they actually don't play them either, so they would have to find a way to have a tiebreaker. Colorado has a huge mountain to climb to even have a shot at the Big 12 championship and, of course, the playoffs. They did clinch a bowl game, so that will help Dion for recruiting next year. Moving into number 22, back into my top 25 is Washington State. They were in the top 25 towards the beginning of the season. They beat San Diego State 29-26, and they just keep winning. Even though they have zero top 25 wins and they had a bad loss against Boise, they do keep winning, and that's part of the game. You got to win all the games presented in front of them, and their only loss is to Boise State. Moving up two spots to rank 21, I have Ole Miss. They defeated Oklahoma 26-14. Oklahoma stayed in the game in the first half, and then Ole Miss dominated that second half, and they ended up winning, like I said, 26-14. Moving to number 20, it's the Mustangs of SMU. They had a overtime win against Duke 28-27. They actually blocked a Duke field goal at the end of regulation to make it into overtime, and then Duke failed a two-point conversion to try to win the game. Duke had 6 turnovers and was still in this game. SMU's coach even mentioned how bad they played and they probably didn't deserve to win that game, but they still did, and they moved up 2 spots as well to that number 20. Falling to 19, I have the LSU Tigers. They lost to 15th ranked A&M 23-38. And like I always say, Brian Kelly strikes again. LSU, it was a tale of two halves. They played really well in the first half, and then Nussmeier threw too many picks in the second, and A&M pulled away. Moving up to 18 from 21 is the Pittsburgh Panthers. They destroyed Syracuse 41-13. They had three pick sixes in the first half. Their offense didn't have to do much because they wasn't on the field. So if you go look at their stats, it's going to look weird, but it's just because McCord threw like 5 interceptions in that game, and Pittsburgh remains undefeated. Moving up just one spot to 17, I have Alabama. I know it's only one spot, but they killed Missouri, who was my 24th ranked team, 34-0. I had Missouri moved all the way down because you could tell they just wasn't playing very good football, and I thought Alabama would take care of business, and that's why I only have Alabama moving up 1. And Alabama looked back to form, but Missouri's just not looking good right now. Plus, Cook was hurt. He tried to play, then he left the game. It's just Cook needs to play the entire game and be fully healthy for Missouri to have a chance of playing Alabama really good. That didn't happen. Moving up one spot to 16 is the Army Black Knights. They had a bye week, so nothing there. actually dropping one spot back to 15. I had Boise State at 14th last week. They're going to be at 15th this week after their close win against 25 UNLV. Genty keeps running the ball well, and that is still helping Boise State. It's going to be interesting who gets that 12th spot in the playoff. And if Army keeps winning and finds a way to beat Notre Dame, they could bypass Boise State. You would still have Washington State. I don't think Louisiana, even though I put them in my top 25, they're just not there yet. Moving down a spot as well for me, at 14th, I have Kansas State. They barely beat Kansas 29-27. Kansas was a top 25 team for me in the beginning of the season, but man, they struggled mightily against Kansas. I know it's an in-state rival, and that probably had something to do with it, but I have Kansas State moving back just one spot to 14th. Moving up just two spots would be at 13th. I have Texas A&M. They upset LSU 38-23. It was a huge second half comeback, and they changed quarterbacks. He came in, he just started running the ball. He only made a few good passes. There was this one pass, though, that he made down the middle and dropped it right in the receiver's breadbasket. It was a great pass. If I was Elko, I would continue to build on Marcel Reed's success. Now, he's going to have to throw the ball more than two times. His legs is what helped them pull away from LSU. If they could find a way to help him, he's got to be able to throw the ball more, which I think he can. I think they just got to let him do that and let him build some confidence while he is starting. But they're definitely going to need him because that offense was not doing anything in the first half. I mean, nothing in the first half. I would not put Wigman back into a game unless something happened to Reed. So we'll see how Elko finishes out the season on that. I only have him moving up two spots because I still think all my playoff teams deserve to be there right now. Plus, one of them beat them head to head. So that's why I have Notre Dame moving back in my playoff and not Texas A&M at the moment. Moving up four spots for me is those Hoosiers of Indiana. They moved to number 12. They handled Washington 31-17 with a backup quarterback. And Rourke means a lot to this team. But they'll need him to get healthy before they have to play Ohio State in 3 weeks. But they cannot overlook Michigan State in Michigan. They have both Michigan teams in the next 2 weeks. Don't overlook them getting ahead of yourself for Ohio State. I don't think Cignetti is going to allow that. They can't afford that stumbling block before they have a chance to have a big upset against Ohio State. So that's your 12 through 25. Let's move on to our playoff teams. Remaining at number 11, I still have Tennessee. They were my number 11 last week. They're AP, they're number 7th currently. It was a bye week, so no player of the game. Their next 3 games, so this week they'll play Kentucky and then Mississippi State, and then the big game in a few weeks against Georgia. Currently, their offensive ranking is 3rd, defense 8th, and strength of schedule is 32nd. That's why I keep them in the playoff, because that team is showing that they are really good on both sides of the ball, even though they've been struggling mightily on offense. They had those big games towards the beginning of the season, and that's what is helping that ranking. But right now they're at number 11. Moving back into a playoff position at rank number 10th, I have Notre Dame. They were ranked 12th last week, so they move up 2 spots. Their AP rank is 8. It says defeated number 19, Navy. It was my 19, 51-14. They dominated Navy. That game wasn't even close at any moment or time. They just completely demolished Navy. Navy's defense is just not there. And I was kind of afraid of that because their strength of schedule is so low. They just really hadn't played anybody with this much talent. The player of the game for Notre Dame is Caden Durham. He's their running back. He had 101 yards with 3 touchdowns. Their next 3 games, they play the Poro Seminoles of Florida State. Then they have Virginia. And then they get the other military academy, which is my number 16, Army. I think Army's defense is a little better, but we'll have to see because Notre Dame, man, they looked really, really good yesterday. Their offensive ranking is 5th, defense 54th, and their strength of schedule is 60th. And really, after Army, they play USC. That's their only 2 tough games moving forward. But early in the season, I thought they'd kill Northern Illinois, and they got upset. So you never know. Staying at the 9th rank for me is the Texas Longhorns. They were 9 last week. Their AP is 6. They squeezed by Vanderbilt 27-24. That was a really fun game to watch. DeAndre Moore is their player of the game. He was a wide receiver. He had 6 catches for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their next 3 games, they get a bye week, and then they play Florida, and then they go to Kansas, and then they have Kentucky. 3 solid SEC teams, and it depends on which team shows up for each one of those games. You don't know which Florida team is going to show up, especially Kentucky. And Arkansas has been playing a little more consistent recently. Their offensive ranking is 21st, defense is 2nd, and their strength of schedule is 44th. And at one time, I thought Vanderbilt was going to have a shot of winning this game, but they threw that pick on that 4th down play, and then Texas had a short field to go kick a field goal, and then Vandy came down, got the touchdown. Ewers he's looking rough. I was actually surprised Sark didn't put Manning in. Manning's got more legs, so if that pocket collapses a little bit, he can run and get you a few yards and keep you in better distances to get first downs more easily. But hey, Stark's sticking with Ewers, so I guess he will live and die with him going forward. But their next 3 games are very winnable. Another team staying at their position at rank number 8, I have the Clemson Tigers. They had a bye week. Their next 3 games would be Louisville, which could be a very tough game for them, at Virginia Tech, who is another solid ACC team, and then they go to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh might be undefeated then. They are currently ranked 18th for me, and they continue to find ways to win. Their rankings changed just a little bit, even though they had an off week. Their offense ranking is 5th, defense 61st, and that strength of schedule 75, kind of on the low end, because they really hadn't played anybody outside of Georgia. But their next 3 games are very solid opponents, and we'll see if Klubnik and the Tigers keep rolling. At number 7, we have the Ohio State Buckeyes. They were 7 last week. They're AP 4th. They defeated Nebraska 21-17. Needed an interception at the end of the game to stop Nebraska's drive. And they had to come back in the 4th quarter to go up 21-17 on Nebraska. Their player of the game is Cody Simon. He's a linebacker, 8 tackles with 3 tackles for losses. Their next 3 games, the big game of the week, they play number 3 Penn State. They will have to go to Happy Valley. Then they'll play Purdue and Northwestern. Those 2 games should be very easy for them. But the big game is this week. It's the noon Saturday game for Fox. It's the premier game for the weekend. And I'm going to talk more about this game when I discuss Penn State. On to number 6, we have the Iowa State Cyclones. They remain at 6th. They're AP ranked as 11th. They had a bye week. Their next 3 games are Texas Tech, which is a pretty decent team. Kansas seems like they're playing better. They played Kansas State good yesterday. And then Cincinnati struggled a little bit against Colorado, but still a pretty decent team. No ranked teams in the future. The only ranked team they have left would be Kansas State. That's their last game of the season. Offensive ranking is 32nd. Defense is 10th. That strength of schedule, like Clemson, is very low, 86th. So they're going to need to win out, to me, to have a really good shot of making the playoff. They might be able to lose one game, but it would have to be the Big 12 championship, and they would have to be undefeated to make the playoff. But on the other side, a lot of teams are getting beat. A lot of teams, 12 through 25, already have 2 losses. They could possibly have 3. So if they keep winning, they still have a pretty good chance of making the playoff. Dropping down one spot for me is Georgia. They didn't play this week, and I thought another team played very well to earn a one-spot move up. So Georgia currently is 5 for me, 2 in the AP. Their next game is always a big game. And look, Florida, no matter who is ranked, if there's a non-ranked team in this game, they always play each other really well. They have Florida this weekend in Jacksonville. Then they have 2 tough games. They have to go to Ole Miss, who is 21st right now for me, and then they have that home game against Tennessee. So 3 very tough games for Georgia coming up. I'm hoping that they can get past Florida and then have a good practice leading up to Ole Miss, and then they'll have the big game at Tennessee. They are at the point with that Alabama loss where they have to at least go 2-1 in these games. 2-1 minimum. If they lose 2, they're out for sure. It would be better if they could win 3. But anyway, their offensive ranking is 42nd, defense is 13th, and that strength of schedule is still first. Moving up one spot for me is the BYU Cougars. They had a big win against UCF, 37-24. They were ranked 5th last week. They're 9th in the AP. Their player of the game was Blake Mangelson. He's a defensive end. He had 4 tackles with a sack. Their next 3 games at Utah. If Cam Rising ever plays, Utah might have a chance of beating someone. Then Kansas, like I said earlier, Kansas played better yesterday. And then at Arizona State, which to me, that's the team that they could stumble on. But those are their next 3 games. Their offensive ranking is 50th. Their defense is 27th. And then their strength of schedule is 55th. If you want to see a nice little fake field goal that they got for a first down, go out and check that out. It was a nice little fake field goal play. But I have them moving up to number 4th. Remaining at number 3, Penn State. They beat Wisconsin 28-13 to go into the big game this weekend as the number 3 team in the nation. Let's talk about Penn State and their performance in big games. In the past 8 years, they've only lost once. They've actually lost 7 in a row. This would be the 5th top 10 game in the past 8 years that they've played. They beat them in 2016 while they were the 6th seed. They have lost to them as the 2 seed, 17th ranked, another 2. They were 18th, 20th, 7th, and 13th. Their kryptonite in the past few years has been the Buckeyes in Michigan as well. But Ohio State, more importantly, because that's the game this weekend, can Franklin find a way to beat Ohio State? He has not shown that he can. This has been a top 20 game in the past 8 years, and they've only won 1. I know they've got to get up for this big game, but they just can't seem to get past Ohio State. And I want to tell you right now, if I was a betting man, which I am not, I would have Ohio State winning by 2 touchdowns this weekend. Minimum. Solid running game, solid defense. You see how well they played Oregon. I still don't think Penn State's that good, especially if Aller's out. He went out yesterday. If he doesn't play, then, you could push it past 14 points. But I just don't see. Franklin has yet to do it. I just don't see them. It's kind of like how Kirby's been against Alabama. That's Franklin against Ohio State. At least Kirby's beat them a few times. Franklin has not. So I expect that big game to be maybe a blowout. Maybe the best game coming up this weekend is going to be Pittsburgh versus SMU. That should be a fun game. Let's finish Penn State up here real quick. Their player of the game over the weekend was Zyke Wheatley. He's a safety. He had 10 tackles. 8 of them were solo. Their next three games, of course, Ohio State. Then they play Washington, and then at Purdue. Washington could give them a decent game as well. Their offensive ranking is 8th, defense 13th, and that strength of schedule is 64, which should go up pretty good with the game against Ohio State this weekend. Staying at number 2 for me is the Miami Hurricanes. They're AP 6. They defeated Florida State 36-14. Player of the game is Damian Martinez, their running back, had 148 yards with 2 touchdowns. Their next 3 games is Duke. Then they go to Georgia Tech, and then they get a bye week before they play Wake Forest. So they're in pretty good shape. I would expect them to go undefeated for the rest of the season. Duke's beatable, Georgia Tech's beatable, Wake Forest definitely is beatable. Then their last game is Syracuse. So their last 4 games are definitely winnable for them to make it to the ACC championship, to probably play Clemson unless they fall out. Miami's biggest thing is, if you look at their schedule, there are some teams that have been ranked, but they didn't play them while they're ranked. Therefore, they have no ranked wins at the moment. They still have the best offense in the nation. Their defense is still ranking out as 39th. Their strength of schedule is still 47th, but they have no top 25 wins. Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Syracuse, they're probably not going to be ranked either. Especially Duke. Duke's not ranked this week. Georgia Tech's not going to be ranked, especially with King being out. They need their quarterback. Wake Forest has no chance, and neither does Syracuse. So they're going to play their whole season without playing a top 25 team. Then they'll go in to play Clemson. Clemson hadn't played anybody but Georgia, so it should be interesting. I still think this team could hold up probably in a playoff game. Just don't know how far they can go. But for now, I have them as number 2. And reigning as the number 1 team still in the nation is the Oregon Ducks. They're 1-1. My previous one, AP1, they defeated ranked 20 Illinois 38-9. And Illinois in their 2 ranked games have not scored over 10 points. So they are not playing good against ranked teams. That's actually why I had them falling out of the top 25. And I didn't discuss my teams going out of the 25, but that's okay. Their player of the game was Tysheem Johnson. He's a defensive back. He had 10 tackles. Their next 3 games, at the beginning of the year, we were pretty excited about going to Michigan. I thought they would have somewhat of a good game, but Michigan has yet to find the offense. Really just a quarterback to run the offense. Then they have Maryland. Then they go to Wisconsin. Wisconsin played Penn State pretty good, but I don't think Oregon will have any issues with these next coming 3 games. Oregon definitely has a chance to finish the season undefeated. They have no more ranked teams to play. They only played 2, Ohio State and Illinois. They beat both of those. And if Ohio State beats Penn State, Ohio State still has Indiana, but we could have a rematch with Ohio State and Oregon for the Pac-12 for the Big Ten championship. But their offense ranking is 11th, defense is 10th, which is a pretty good balance. Their strength of schedule is 63rd. And there it is, your number 1 team in the nation, the Oregon Ducks. Let's move on to the playoff bracket and see how it looks going into Week 10. With only a few shifts in the ranking for me, the bracket looks pretty similar to what it did last week. We'll start in the top left-hand corner. You have the number 1 seed, Oregon. The 8th seed would be Clemson playing the 9th seed, Texas. And then the 12th seed would be Boise State playing the 5th seed, Penn State. With me flip-flopping BYU and Georgia. Georgia's now the 4th seed. That'd be in the bottom left. In the top right hand, we have BYU as the 3 seed. And then you would have Tennessee, the 11th seed, playing Iowa State, the 6th seed. Then you would have Notre Dame playing, or the 10th seed playing Ohio State. And then Miami would get that last bye as the 2 seed. And that is the bracket for Week 10. Moving on to the Heisman watch. Moving back in that 4 through 7 spot is Nick Nash for San Jose State. He had another touchdown. He has had a receiving touchdown in every game he's played in this year and had over 100 yards. He takes over the most receiving yards for the nation again. I leave Bryson Daly, the quarterback for Army, at number 6. He didn't play. And then at number 5, Colin Ramos. Man, Navy got killed, but this kid, he was all over the place in that game. He had 15 tackles. They just need a couple more of him to make a difference on the defense. But he played his heart out. I mean, he was all over the place. So I want to keep him at number 5. Falling out of the top 3 is Sean Dullock from Buffalo. He still leads the nation in tackles, but I'm leaving him at number 4. Now my top 3 that would go to New York, starting with number 3, Cam Ward. He only had 208 yards passing. He didn't have a touchdown, and they really didn't need one, but he continues to carry the Miami Hurricanes. Moving to the 2 spot, I have Ashton Genty, the running back for Boise State. On 33 carries, he had 128 yards and 1 touchdown. Man, they're going to have to slow his carries down if they have a chance of getting into the playoff and making a difference. I know in some of the other games he didn't have that many carries, and they really needed him in this game this past week against UNLV. But right now, I know this is a full body of work that they'll look at, but this is just a fluid week by week. I have him at number 2. Moving back as my Heisman winner is Travis Hunter. This kid, he had 9 catches for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 2 tackles and 4 pass defended. So he had 4 blocks on someone trying to throw his way. I'm back on the hype train with Travis. I was one of the first on the train. This kid is looking remarkable, and if Colorado keeps winning, it helps his chances. If I can get a video to load, I want you to watch this video. I will show it, but it shows great competitiveness with a cornerback in respect. It just makes me really want him to win it even more. But for right now, he is my winner at this point again, and that's the kid from Colorado, Travis Hunter. As always, thank you for listening to Spotter Red. Tell somebody you love them today. Go watch a football game with someone. Later.